Thanks for listening to GYST.
You're listening to Get Your Shit Together with Adina and Diane, a digestible health and fitness show for women.
Real quick, the content of this podcast is intended for general information only and is not medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Chat with your healthcare provider before making changes, okay? Okay, cool.
I think they got it. Let's jump right into this week's episode.
Hey babies.
Hello.
It's August. It is sweaty. I sweat through my dress. Ooh. I'm discovering I'm sweating in new spots now that the tatas can almost rest on this shelf. And a friend said, get ready, because when you can, this is a good just wait, okay? She was like, get ready for when you can finally use your belly as like a little shelf for like a snack.
For your ice cream? That's
so I can lean back. And I've been using my Yeti. Neil got one from some conference. I think last season or a couple seasons ago, I was talking about how my dentist gives new patients a Yeti. And I don't care what logo's on it. Like, I like it for some cold vanilla ice cream with malt and salt on top. And I've been trying, a hot tip was to put a little bit of really good extra virgin olive oil drizzled on top. And it really brings out the olive, but in a way that I like, because typically I'm not with the olives.
You learned that one on TikTok?
No, I think it was from Tori. She's a branding and graphic design pal on Instagram. Yeah.
Lovely.
Pretty good. Little shelf. How are you this evening?
I'm good. I said to myself, I'm not going to wear another black t-shirt on another episode of GYST. And then, alas, I had to finish my training session before this recording. And here we are. Here we are again.
Just a gothic gal, and I'm over here like aggressively colorful, like the on-brand nails. Hello.
I know.
Hello. Can I write it off?
Yeah, you can. Duh. I have been wearing a little more color lately, but
I noticed
something about a black t-shirt when I'm dripping sweat. That's nice.
I know, I keep seeing these really cute, vibrant matching sets for the gym, like a light blue, and there was an orchid, and I thought, my butt sweat.
How's this gonna go?
And like I said in a previous episode, though, I don't care if I sweat through in public. And I know some girlies be like, ooh. And I'm like, yeah, that's my swamp ass. I was working hard with those kettlebell swings.
I also don't care. And also here, it's much more like I mentioned people just walk around with sweat stains, but there's something about like when I train in the morning and then I just like run downstairs, get on the bike to go pick up the kids. And I just,
Yeah.
It's a white t-shirt or a black t-shirt. That's really what it's gonna be.
Yeah, I hear you. Uh-oh. We have a level 5 clinger here. I mentioned on Instagram that Doug had a little bit of a tummy bug, and I think maybe it's time for a canine track of Root Cause Reset, my Root Cause Reset course, to get his gut
that would sell,
back online. And the first thing will be maybe don't eat mystery things in your backyard or on your walk. But he had me up like 4 or 5 times overnight asking to go out, so good newborn practice, but he's now right underneath my chair.
That's nice. So when you hear Doug clawing away at Diane's legs.
Yeah, asking for lap time.
That's nice.
Well, what are you consuming over there? I told you about my ice creams.
Yum. I actually made this for a friend who just had a baby, and it was very delicious. I made in my Instant Pot because, when you just have a baby, you need that gelatinous soup.
I thought you were going to say set and forget, which is also great.
Well, yeah, but I was making it so she didn't have to do anything anyway.
Yeah.
But I used ossobuco, so nice and like, so gelatinous. Is there
good bone in there.
Is there a more appealing word than gelatinous?
Mucilaginous, perhaps. I was talking about those when I was talking about some gut herbs to a client.
Yeah.
I was like, this is a mucilaginous herb. I'm like, that's disgusting.
I know. Anyways, so I seared the ossobuco in my Instant Pot, which if you're not familiar with ossobuco, it's just like a very gelatinous cut of meat. It has that texture like similar to like beef cheeks almost, like so nice. And I seared that up and then made like a red soup with it. So
Yeah.
red, tomato sauce, broth, carrots, onion, greens, finished it with some greens, like, nice.
Do I need to have our baby in Tel Aviv so that you can make me some things? Because I don't know
I wish.
if we have someone who will be making us those things.
Yeah, and obviously a big loaf of bread alongside it. And just
Obviously. Reminds me I need to feed my starter. I'm actually going to make cookies again today. Yeah. Over here, I've been, ice cream, but maybe I'll add this to the ice cream situation. Stone fruit is thriving at the market right now. And a few years ago, it just wasn't for me. And last summer, I was eating a fresh, juicy peach. And I say to Neil, my mouth itches. And he goes, I don't think that's for you. And I was like,
yeah.
weighing cost and reward. So far, so good. And perhaps it's like the lowered immune system of pregnancy. But I really like the donut peaches.
Yeah.
And we have nectarines. And I got a mixed plum assortment. Oh
Plums.
my gosh, they're so good.
So good.
Maybe make it into an ice cream or like a sorbet. That could be really nice.
No, just eat them straight for me.
I know it's so hard. Like I always think I'm going to save these blueberries for a
Yeah.
blueberry matcha syrup. And I end up eating them all
Just take
like a
them
child.
right to the dome. My
Yeah.
kids actually love frozen blueberries. Like I'll just
just straight out of the freezer.
Yeah, just a little snack. I know
Cute.
people do frozen grapes, but it started because when we were living in New Jersey, like the frozen blueberries were just so much cheaper at Whole Foods, like the organic frozen blueberries, especially in a time of the year when you like couldn't get great blueberries. And my kids would just eat them straight out of the freezer, like a little ices snack.
Nice. I do love frozen grapes. In Japan at 7-Eleven, we found these grape, it was a frozen popsicle dessert, but the texture of it was so unique because it wasn't literally actually a grape, but the mouthfeel was so good and the texture was just so fun. Like their frozen desserts were on a whole nother level.
Yum.
I miss them.
Yum.
What about media? Olympics still in full swing.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. And also, you know what I started saying yesterday, and then the 90s girls might know? I just, like, we were talking about what we're going to watch, and I just started going, you know how things just, like, emerge from my subconscious? I started going, the Olympics. And then I was like, what is that from? Oh my God, is that a Rugrats episode that I'm remembering from 1997? Like,
30 years ago? Oh, a deep cut.
like, the way Angelica says, like, the Olympics. And then I just kept remembering it. And then we watched it.
Your recall for very specific episodes is so impressive. Like, did you go and find a clip for the gals?
We found the episode, and then we tried to watch it. It was a little insufferable. We watched a few minutes of it. I'm sure someone out there is like, I know exactly what she's talking about. It must have been memorable. I don't know. It was memorable.
Neil and I were just saying, like, what will we have our kid watch? And actually, I'm planning on sharing a little reveal, mostly because I'm like, I can't keep it to myself and I know I'm going to slip up somewhere, but we're like, can we have our kid watch just like fun, nostalgic, like cartoons from our youth? And Neil's like, Rugrats? And I go, Ren and Stimpy and SpongeBob. And he goes, no, SpongeBob is annoying.
So it's funny because like I always thought that's what I would do. And then when I rewatched them, I was like horrified. But if you listen back to this podcast, I have made some excellent recommendation about children's programming.
You have. I mean, I caught Neil singing Bluey after we visited you, so.
Yeah.
Well, Olympics is definitely happening over here, but as we were saying in our text thread together, this is now our camera segment.
Yes, welcome
for
back
this
to
season.
Our camera podcast.
Yeah, Adina's like, I'm watching camera videos again. Even though she has a camera she knows and loves now, was watching some, and I've been watching some, but I guess this isn't media. I got a camera strap for my cute little camera. And this actually, like, Etsy is just a treasure trove. You have to do some digging, and I kind of had an idea of what I wanted. I was finding these, I think they're called paracord or like bungee cord camera straps, but some of them were heinously overpriced for what they were, and like the cord was way too thick. So I found someone who makes these camera lanyards, like macrame style, and they're really colorful and fun. And I messaged her and I was like, do you think that you could modify this for a camera strap? And I showed her in the messages like the attachment that I would need. And she next day was like, oh, I sourced some little clippies that would work well for your camera strap. And it came pretty quickly. It actually came from all the way from Turkey. I try to find some like more local artists, but I've found like necklaces from Greece. There was, and then these little accessories. And if anyone has a real camera, you can get like fun hot shoe covers to protect the top of your camera. Or I have a little shutty button in here.
Cute.
Looks like Mount Fuji. So super fun. But I mean, maybe I could also use this strap on my phone when I need something handy with baby hair.
When it came, was Neil like, I could have made that in 3 seconds?
Well, I showed it to him before I ordered it. I was like, what do you think of this? And he was like, that's not even great macrame. If anyone doesn't know, Neil's really good at macrame. He made a wall hanging or a hanging for our wedding, and he's made lanterns and such. And it just wasn't his style. We have different style, and I just don't care. And also, like, he's too busy. Like, I would be haggling and saying, hey, did you get my strap done?
Yeah, don't work with family. Everyone knows that.
Yeah. But the colors are very on brand, so I'm super excited.
It's very cute. We're very excited for you. So that concludes this camera segment of our podcast today.
Yes.
I sent Diane a picture of this boat that I passed, and it was like the most perfectly framed boat out on the sea. And I was just like, I was so mad when I went for my walk this morning that I didn't have my camera.
Yeah, you got to have that everyday carry.
It was just like we went for such a quick walk because I had a loaf of bread in the oven and we were exhausted and I knew Ori was going to need an earlier nap. I didn't take
Well, if you brought it, you wouldn't have seen that perfect moment. That's just how it works.
Maybe I would have.
Next time. Oh, well, we're diving into the meat and we haven't done this a little bit.
We didn't actually talk about Olympics yet this episode. I feel like
Olympics.
I just need to share a little bit. I'm obsessed.
What did you cry over this week with Olympics?
I'm obsessed with throwing sports, all the throwing sports. I love track and field. Like, it's so good. I sent you that reel. Did you watch it of the American discus thrower, the spaghetti story? Did you hear that?
No, I'm sure it's in our DMs.
I DM'd it to you. Basically, this girl, she's a discus thrower for Team USA, and she's great. And the reason that she got into discus is because in high school, she joined track and field, and she was like a jumper, and I think she was like running. But then she found out that the throwers had a spaghetti party. And so she's like,
oh wait, I did see this. Yeah.
It's like, you ever want pasta so bad that you train for the Olympics?
And it's so niche too. I always wonder how people get into it, and I guess that's her origin story. Yeah, or shot put. What else is is that the one? No, discus is that one. No,
the hammer throw is like, it's like a string with like a 8 kg ball on the end, and they like swing it around and then like launch it into the abyss.
That's intense because it feels like it could go so wrong. It
could, and actually, I had to look this up, and I found out that
who's been killed.
No, in some high schools they're banning it because it's dangerous for participants and spectators and everyone involved. And I, as a movement professional, I'm just watching this and I'm like, holy T-spine. Like, I cannot believe the thoracic extension that they get as a person who has birthed and nursed 3 babies, and just like all I do is fight for the tiniest bit of thoracic extension, and then they're just like, oh my god, it's like another dimension.
Well, it sounds like next training block some of that throwing might be in there. Is that a spoiler?
No, oh my god, I wish, honestly. But
I've only cried over one Olympics video this week, and it was I think he's from France, doesn't matter. This guy broke his own world record doing pole vaulting and immediately ran to his girlfriend and kissed her. I cried so hard. And people were like, Emily Henry better start writing a romance book about this. And I know the girlies who read any touch of romance will know who she is. She just puts out bangers that always turn to TV or films, at least in production now. Oh my gosh, it was so sweet. Like, he didn't hesitate. His feet barely hit the ground and he ran over to her and kissed her, because you know that she's made sacrifices too for him to train to get to this point. And the fact that he just,
Did you happen upon the video from her perspective? Like, she was filming
it?
Oh, I can't. Also, can I tell you the funniest thing about pole vaulting? I love
the big dong.
That obviously we talked about last week. I love how either they are celebrating or throwing a tantrum in midair. They're like flying over the thing, like puffing their fists, like it's so funny.
I don't know who came up with it. I mean, and that's one that has been around for a very long time.
600
so
BC.
Cool.
That's the best.
Man, I love the Olympics.
I know.
And people have said it before, but like, why can't they have, like, whether it's swimming, which synchronized swimming, I saw China's like synchronized swimming.
The artistic swimming. Wait, I sent you that for artistic gymnastics.
We're just all gonna watch it. We're gonna put them in the show notes so you feel like you're in our group text too.
No, but I told you should just remix it on our page.
Yeah. Oh, the farting guy. Yeah, that's definitely, that could be a sport. But the synchronized swimming or any diving, like, I just want to see a normal, like, average person
just
swimming next to them, just to know. But like, people were like, can you imagine getting a cramp during that routine?
Yeah, I love the underwater, like the way their feet are moving, you know.
And they have the nose plugs, so they look a little crazy.
Little crazy.
With like full makeup and like nose plugs.
By the way, how is that not a commercial for that waterproof makeup? Their makeup did not move.
Waterproof, because I've had some waterproof products that did not stand up to like crying at the Olympics or whatever, you know.
Submerging in a pool at the Olympics.
Yeah. Well, now let's talk about activity in a different way. Strength training for the everyday athlete. For the athleticism of motherhood. Yeah, I was trying to segue it. But this one is a
something
listener
that's an Olympic
request.
sport, but isn't. What is it? Name something. That should
things
be an
I would.
Olympic sport.
Motherhood. You know, working full time and getting your workout in. That's an Olympic sport.
Just like existing.
We could go
in
on.
2024. You know.
Yeah, during an election year, all that.
Yeah.
So tell them about how this episode came about. We actually got into our email inbox.
Yes, I am very excited for this episode. This is a conversation that I've had in my head 100 times, but after we were reached out to about this, I was like, have we not talked about this out loud, Adina? You know,
right.
I feel like this is something we need to be talking about more. So basically what happened was someone reached out to us, a lovely, sweetie, cutie athlete, and she is an STHH alum, and she is in the club, and she loves her kettlebells. She is feeling strong, but she's struggling with some nagging injuries that are just keeping her set back and keeping her from pushing in the way that she wants to. And she mentioned that she finally found a great PT to work through some of these nagging injuries, which love that for you. It is challenging to find a great PT sometimes. But she mentioned that sometimes she's feeling a little discouraged in the STHH community when other women are celebrating their big goals, their big PRs, and being encouraged to push themselves harder. So she was kind of asking us how to navigate some of that mindset stuff that's coming up and how to balance pushing yourself versus understanding when to be listening to your body and slowing down. So we thought that this was an awesome conversation to have because I'm sure this is coming up for a lot of you, and this is something that comes up because pain is a part of life. And so as women and athletes and doing all the things, it's going to happen. Even if we are training, even if we are doing all the right things, even if we think we are above pain because we have already navigated away from it. You know, what that really looks like in reality and how to navigate it in your training and in your mindset.
Yeah, totally. And this is, I mean, reading through her message, I'm sure other people feel seen by that, whether they're beating themselves up on their own or just feeling discouraged. Maybe they're also measuring how they should progress by old measurements, like the way that they might have gone about things in CrossFit or training on their own, or maybe they're bringing perfectionism to this process. I know that I've related to a lot of things that this person said in her message when I was going through some setbacks with pain or different capacity in pregnancy, different seasons of life. So I hope that if you need to hear this message, that it really lands for you and makes you feel validated and supported. And so you also mentioned that this is something you and Coach V have been thinking about in the club and your programs. Do you want to talk a little bit about that too?
Yes. So I want to mention off the bat that, first of all, if you are a person who feels like you are in pain or a program is not meeting your needs entirely, the number one thing that I will say is like reach out as much as you can, because we are there to support you. And I know it can feel hard or scary to reach out with something like that when we cultivate a certain,
like, a goal or progress driven mindset, maybe.
Yeah.
At least I'm thinking about it in the context of, like, I've had clients who are like, oh yeah, I had a stomach bug last week, like one-on-one clients.
Yeah, totally.
And I'm like,
Why
oh,
did you tell me?
You tell me? And they're like, well, I didn't want to complain. I'm like, bring it here. I mean, I think that you can hold both. You can feel discouraged or in pain and still be problem solving oriented.
Yes.
You know, that's different than like, oh, it sucks, I'm in pain, I'm just like, I can't do this. So I feel like you can hold both, feeling discouraged but still wanting to be growth for it. And that's what your coaches are here for. That's what I'm here for as an NTP. That's what you and Coach V are here for as strength coaches. So, you know, don't suffer in silence by any means.
Yes, absolutely. Like, inside of our community, we want you to reach out. We want you to ask your questions. We want you to show up to the live calls. That's honestly, like, I will talk to this more at the end. But if you are in a season where you feel like things keep creeping up and it's just, you feel like you can't navigate it on your own, maybe that's a month where you upgrade your subscription to live call access and try to show up as much as you can. Because when we're on live with you and we can watch you move and we can coach you and help you navigate some of those things, that can be really helpful in figuring out how to navigate some of that stuff on your own. But like Diane was mentioning, this is a conversation that we've had a lot because it is such a tricky balance. And I feel like a couple years ago, we got stuck in this place of not babying our athletes, but not encouraging everyone to step out of their comfort zones a little bit, because I think that STHH is this wonderful program where it is a safe starting point for so many people who have not had a safe starting point for so long, whether they've been showing up to these group classes and trying to keep up in the class and not realizing that that was so beyond their current capacity, and then coming home with so many injuries or feeling so incredibly run down, or like their PCOS symptoms were flaring, or like
we're flailing
and flaring, and their Hashimoto's was wiping them out for 3 weeks after they went to a group fitness class. And then they found STHH and they were like, wait a minute, I can get the mostest out of the leastest. I can feel stronger and not exhausted. And this thing can progress so gradually where I can actually start to feel capable again, start to feel wonderful in my body. And then they would kind of hang out there for a little bit too long. And we would have women who did STHH 2 years ago, and then they would join the club, and we would be like, what weight are you using for your deadlift? And they'd be like, oh, the 12 kg that I bought 2 years ago. Or
which is how many pounds?
It's like 26 pounds. Yeah.
Okay.
And, or, you know, we'd be like, what weight are you using for your presses? And they're like, oh yeah, the 8 kg I bought 2 years ago. And so V and I kind of got to this place where we were like, we need to help these women to understand what progress looks like at every stage of the game, and to teach them how to train and how to push themselves and find that sweet spot and find where the edge is of their current capacity, where they could just introduce a little bit more stress, still recover well, and come out stronger and more powerful on the other side of it. And so I think we kind of got to this place now where we're like, oh wait, have we been sending that message too loud and not communicating to those women who do need to scale it back and need to find that understanding of what this looks like for them in this season. So I'm so glad that we received this message, because it's helping us to make sure that everyone is being seen inside the community and getting what they need out of it. So this, as always, when women show up with this kind of feedback, it obviously hit me very deeply. And we are in conversation figuring out how we can add, certain modules and conversations and bring in some guest PTs to make sure that the club just continues to get better and better, and that everyone in there is finding exactly what they need from that. But I think it's so important to continue having this conversation, because you are going to hear it and receive it differently at completely different stages in your life. Like if you are currently in pain, this conversation might sound very different versus if you navigated away from some pain and you're feeling ever so strong and like you're in
like, I'm ready to go.
So it's again, always understanding that we are going to do our best inside of that community to make sure that we can give you everything you need, but it isn't one-on-one physical therapy. And so figuring out, how do I, as a person who am currently experiencing pain, get what I need out of a group setting, out of a community setting, and kind of figure out how to navigate that push and pull. So very, very glad, all that to say, very glad we're having this conversation. And it's not one, here is the answer. The answer is, it is a tricky balance to strike. And we're going to try to help you to figure out like what is the context and how to strike that balance on your own.
It depends answer. I use that a lot in nutritional therapy, but
it's so annoying.
But that's the reality, right? There isn't a clear-cut answer. There's going to be ebbs and flows. This is the same thing I talk about with nutritional therapy clients. And I have returning clients I've worked with 2-3 times now. Someone who a couple of years ago, doing great. Now, since then, a couple years later, she's moved, has lost some loved ones in the last year. Some things happen with her kids, so like lots of life shifts. And she was like, I'm feeling discouraged by where my gut's at. I'm trying to revisit, root cause reset certain elements there. And that reminded me, like, when you can have a good protocol or like a perfect quote unquote protocol or strength program or gut healing program on paper, but where it really shines in the work that we do with our clients and with athletes is you developing your body awareness and the intuition to make adjustments for yourself and where you're at in your life. So I'm so excited we're having this conversation. We'll talk about when to push, when to maintain, some encouragement if you are dealing with pain, and how to seek and give support, especially if you are in a community setting. Maybe how to know if like what you're doing, if it's not already STHH, what to do instead, but just how to seek and ask for support. And then also maybe some reframes that could be helpful for you along the way if you're dealing with some recurring injury or pain. So let's dive in. So how to know when to push and when to maintain, like that, how do you find that balance? What are some ways they can get started if they're feeling like nagging pain and injury?
Yes. So I think the biggest thing to approach this conversation with is like, we all need to be on the same page about the fact that like pain is part of life. And at some point in your life, you will be training in the context of pain. It could be a acute injury. It could be like little nags and aches here and there. And it could be chronic pain for some of us, unfortunately. But it's not that the goal of training is always to be pain-free. 1000% pain-free for the rest of my life. Like, I did this program and now I am pain-free. But the thing with pain is that it is so incredibly complex. Like it's not, like you were saying with gut issues as well, it's not this clear-cut thing of like, take these supplements, problem solve forever. It's so different for each of us based on our injury history, based on our stresses outside of that, based on the stories that our body has been telling for years and years. And so it's one of those things where we need to come to this conversation with the understanding that like pain happens and that's fine. And it's about how to not get derailed by pain and injury and how to understand how to navigate them. So again, like, I think it's such an outdated way of thinking about things, and it's such a predatory marketing way of thinking about things, where we have a lot of these like PTs, rehab professionals, even trainers who are like, oh, I know the root cause of your back pain. It's because you don't
this
know
one thing.
Yeah, like you don't know how to activate your abs, or you don't know how to hinge. And those things can totally be factors. But having the knowledge that it is not one root cause and it is multiple potential instigators every time we approach this conversation, I think can be really helpful in helping us to like figure out how to respond to this and approach this. And so I think that as long as we can get away from like the fear of pain and that quest for like the one thing we did wrong yesterday that made it hurt today, because like
I've caught myself doing that even recently. Like, oh, is it that one thing? Because it's nice to have a tidy solution or a tidy reason why we feel not good, right?
Yeah, it's much simpler that way, right? It's like, then I just, okay, like the way doctors say, like, oh, like that hurts, don't do that. And then you'll be fine, It's just like,
just don't lift anything over 20 pounds if you're hurting.
Right. So it is tricky. And for some of us who have had this experience where gaining strength solved all our problems, it can feel very discouraging when something else arises later on. And it's like, I didn't fix it. Or being strong isn't the only answer. And then
I'm not strong enough. Yeah. I'm not doing enough in my training.
Yeah. And I have had like, it's like, okay, I think of my athletes who came into STHH so deconditioned and with so little coordination and strength, that coordination and strength solved so many of their problems. Like I think of some of my athletes who have been with me since the beginning for years, and they came in so deconditioned, so uncoordinated, never considered themselves a strong person, and 12 weeks after learning how to hold a kettlebell and pressing and hinging and squatting, and their back pain was gone and their wrist pain was gone. And we can look at those examples and be like, oh, this program solves all my pain problems. And we have to talk about like, what is the starting point? And if you're a person who's been training for a long, long time and you've had a baseline of strength, when some of these aches and pains come up, and then you're like, wait, but I'm doing everything right. Like, I can do a pull-up. I can press my 16 kg. Like, why does this hurt? Why does that hurt? And coming back to that understanding that it's not so simple, but it's not something to be scared of. I think for so many of us, pain has been this alarm for so long, where we think like, oh, I must be doing something very wrong if my back hurts, if my neck hurts, if my shoulder hurts. And I must avoid movement for fear of like severely complicating something in my body, I know that creeps up so much for us. So I think this is a long-winded way of saying the most important thing we can do is just not fear pain and understand that it is complex. And sometimes it's as simple as, I did this thing yesterday and it wasn't that the movement was wrong. It wasn't that I executed it wrong. It was just a little too much, or I was just a little underslept, or
maybe you're right. There are things outside of training. It has nothing to do with you did that lift wrong or too much or too hard. Maybe I slept so hard like this for a few hours and I was dehydrated yesterday. This is such a quintessential like guy thing to say. I feel like I've seen memes about it. Yesterday I was like, oh, my neck's a little creaky, and he was like, did you drink enough water today? And he brought me my Stanley. It's like, are you underhydrated? Like, that's very possible. But that's one thing I love about the app that you use for STHH Club is before you can even start your workout, it asks about energy, soreness, and it doesn't say like, oh, you're a little sore, well, you better close out of this app and go lay on the floor. Asks about your mood even. So, I mean, there are a multitude of factors that could be contributing to your pain and why you didn't feel as crispy.
Exactly. And it seems so clear cut, where it's like, oh, I pressed too much yesterday. Like, I know I pushed myself a little too far and now my neck hurts. Or in your case, like, oh, I pushed myself a little too hard on the pull-ups and now I have a tension headache. And it's like, that sounds very simple in our brains, where it's like point A to point B, but also I am in my second trimester, or I am not sleeping well because my dog is having a tummy bug. Like, there's so many things that we want to convince ourselves aren't the answer, but those play a massive role. And I think that our lizard brains are so good at being like, this lift hurt me in the past. This lift is scary to me. So like,
avoid.
Yes, so many people have this with the deadlift, right? Like, they've had a back injury history with a deadlift, and then their brain is saying to them, the deadlift made backy hurty, and now if I approach it again, like, think about, we talk about this so much in the context of like digesting dairy, right? Where we're like, you've created this whole story in your head that when you go to eat that ice cream, your tummy is already turning. Like, you have so much stress associated
the anticipation
with this food.
of it. Yeah, that fear lives in your body. So like, when you start talking about pain is not something to fear, maybe that feels like a tall order, but where can you practice acceptance of it? Like, yes, my neck hurts because of this reason or a multitude of reasons, but how can I accept myself and then find ways to modify? I'm sure we'll talk about that in this episode, is ways to modify so that you're not completely all or nothing, like sitting things out until you feel 100% to approach that lift again.
Yes. And if you come from old school PT, where like the person who wrote this to us said she finally found a good PT, and my hope is for all of you to find that, and for good PT to mean someone who is strength focused, who understands that pain is not a problem, and pain is not this alarm system that means shut it down, don't strength train, that gaining capabilities and gaining function are the goal of your rehab, and understanding how to respond to and navigate when pain does naturally arise. Like, that is what we want for you, because that is what gets you to enjoying your life, being able to go on the hikes, do the fun things on vacation, lift all the stuff, throw your kids in the air, jump on the trampoline without this fear of, I am a fragile person who is getting increasingly more fragile as I age. And every time I try to deadlift or press or progress my pull-up or progress my squat, this finicky thing arises, and now I feel like I can't continue to push in the way that I want to because of this thing that keeps coming up that is going to ruin my life, whatever the story is that we're telling ourselves about the pain. So if you are going to a rehab professional who is diagnosing you with all these things that are wrong with you and telling you that you need to be on this mat doing these rehab exercises for the rest of your life because you have this horrible thing that's wrong with you and it's only going to keep getting worse if you try to, run.
You have exercise intolerance.
Run. Find yourself a strength-focused PT who understands how to have these conversations with you around pain, because even in the context of PT, if a good PT is working with you on your rehab and trying to get you back to a place where you can have all this fun with your kettlebells that you love to have, they should be okay with your pain flaring sometimes. Like, obviously that's not the goal of rehab. We don't want pain to flare, but it means that we're getting closer to the edge. We're getting closer to your capacity. And that's what we're trying to discover with this whole thing, is like the Goldilocks amount that we can apply to get you stronger without having all these setbacks. So what I see as the big problem with pain in the industry on a whole is, again, like people getting so scared and derailed from their pain and thinking that it means that they have to shut down, XYZ operation, whatever training they're doing, whatever fun thing they love to do that they can't seem to not get hurt doing. So either that, just like creating all this fear around acute pain and flare-ups and things like that, or approaching rehab in a way that it's never going to get you back to doing what is meaningful and fun for you. Like if you love to run marathons and you keep ending up with XYZ injuries, and then your PT is like, well, I guess marathons are not for you. Like, I am telling you that this thing is meaningful to me and I want to do this thing. So your job as my rehab professional, if you're really good at what you do, is to approach my training in a way that it actually gets me back to the meaningful thing that I want to do, however long that might take, you know, based on what we're dealing with. But there is a safe starting point for everyone, and there is a way to progress every single person to where they want to go if we do this gradually enough. And again, what we come up against in, say, a group program and having you understand how to navigate this on your own is, what I see a lot is like, oh, I love squats. That's the lift that's super fun for me. But are we maybe ignoring some of the more boring stuff that's in the program that might be what bridges the gap for you to get you from being in pain to being able to progress your squat with minimizing that pain and getting back to the function and the capacity that you want to have to be able to do your life really well. And this was me, and you know, is me sometimes.
Like postpartum season, I think you've talked about before, like no one is above the basics.
Yeah.
And if you have been in pain or you're coming back from postpartum, that's a major healing season. Don't try to measure your success by what you were able to do pre-pregnancy or before that injury necessarily, but scaling it back and coming back to those basics is still relevant for everyone, every athlete. I know you've mentioned that plenty.
Yes, and I'll give you a really good clue to know what you need to be doing more of in your program, because this happens to me all the time. If there is something that every time you see it in the program, your instinct is to skip it because you're like, that's really hard and I don't have time for it today, whoopsie, you know, that's probably the thing that you need the most. And we are all guilty of it. We gravitate towards doing what we are good at. And oftentimes the thing that you've been skipping is the thing that you need the most. So for example, if you are really trying to progress your pull-up, but you keep skipping the arm farm and you keep skipping your isometrics and your bicep curls and your tricep extensions because you're like, those are boring or those are hard and you know what, see, I didn't have time for them today. And then you're dealing with like nagging elbow injuries every time you try to progress your pull-ups. This is something we need to take a look at. For me, postpartum, I struggle so much with my inner thighs, with my adductors. And as we've talked about many times on this show before, and as we talk to our athletes about all the time, your inner thighs plug right up into the bottom of your pelvic floor. And if you are dealing with leaking issues or you are dealing with a lot of pelvic pressure or instability at the pelvis, and you keep skipping that inner thigh work, that's somewhere where I'd be like, perhaps this is a missing piece. Yeah, those who are watching on YouTube. For me, I was skipping the lateral lunges. I was skipping the Copenhagen planks. And I think this training block with those deep Cossack squats, those deep lunges, lateral lunges all the way to the floor, I think those were a real missing piece for me in my pelvic floor journey postpartum. Like I have had less leaking this current training block than I have in all of my postpartum seasons. It's with heavy lifting and jumping. And for me, it's also the plyometrics, like the track drills. They are so hard for me. It is so hard for me to get my bounce back postpartum. And so when I'm out of time, I will skip those, or I will not give them my all. You know, I'll kind of like go through the motions, but sometimes going through the motions is not getting you better at the lift. Like, are you really committing to this thing that you don't love to do, but you know is probably the missing piece for you in that full body wellness, shall we say?
I'll call myself out. I was definitely rushing through some of the warm up and some of the mobility and the breathing cool down, and I realized through some of the pain I was experiencing, asking questions, seeing someone who's helping me with my tension neck headaches, they're like more dead hangs, And really, I love the rock back, the one where you're kind of reaching side to side.
Oh yeah, that
and
child's
I
pose
need
with
to
the reach.
I need to really hold that and just really feel that all the way down my side. And the more that I do that, the less frequent this pain has been, because all the growing pains and changes have been affecting me. So in order to keep that pain kind of like a lower level, lower threshold, I've had to definitely lean into that more and be honest with myself about not skipping it. So how do people know when to push? Like, what are some things that they should think about if they want to challenge themselves a little bit more in their training?
Yes, this is such a good question. And sometimes you just know, like if you've been consistent with your training, and I mean consistent, not just like showing up, but like we said, working hard, getting through the session, doing the lifts, giving them the intention, not just like going through the motions. If you've been consistent with your training, if you are gradually progressing, not just sitting at that same 8 kg, 12 kg that you bought when you first signed up for STHH, or if you haven't done STHH, those 15-pound dumbbells that you bought in college, like if you are truly committing to gentle progressions week over week, you are eating your protein, you are eating your carbs, you are sleeping, you are hydrated, you are managing your stress decently. Obviously, there is stress in life, but if you feel like the world is weighing you down and it is impossible for you to get through your days, probably not the best time to push. However, still a great time to train, because training will give you that capacity back. It will make you feel more resilient in your days. But if you are feeling even, you are feeling like I am doing it, I am meeting my needs, that is probably a time where you can really push it. And not to say that you can't push it if every single puzzle piece isn't perfectly in place, but it comes down to, like we said, just kind of being honest with yourself and like assessing, am I pushing a PR for like a vanity metric, or because I saw other people doing it, or because I just have this like competitive thing inside me that makes me feel like I want to chase goals even if they're just my own. Those things are fine, but let's be honest about if this makes sense for you right now. And right, like, is it just because Coach Adina and Coach Veronica said, like, last week of the training block, push yourself? And we do that because, again, we want to get people out of their comfort zones. But you do always need to listen to your own body and understand pushing myself for me in this season might just mean showing up for the last week of the training block. Pushing myself in this season might just mean showing up with intention to this last session, not having my mind in 3,000 other places, doing the breath work, getting through the whole session. Maybe it's like I was doing the leastest this whole training block and I never had time for the accessories, and pushing myself today is like carving out the time, blocking off my calendar, telling my partner or getting a babysitter, whatever it is, finding the space to like really show up for myself in the last week. Or pushing yourself might mean grabbing that heavier kettlebell or trying to get 1 or 2 more reps. Like, pushing yourself can look really, really different based on where you're at. And again, it totally can be hard in a community setting where we're setting a standard and we're asking you to show up for yourself, but trying to understand that it has to look really different in different seasons, because especially us as women, like, some of us are here in our cycle, some of us are postpartum, prenatal, we're up all night with a kid or a dog. Like, we are holding such a massive mental load, and training can still be a wonderful part of our lives that allows us to progress. But we have to know that we can't compare ourselves to ourselves, a version of ourselves that we were when our stresses were different, or to other people that are in wildly different stages. I sent you that meme that was like, I can't watch the Olympics and not think that some of these women are on cycle day 30. Like, some of them are just bleeding on that podium.
It shouldn't be fair.
Like,
right. It shouldn't be fair that someone menstruating is going up against a woman who's ovulating.
Like, what?
Although if they're in that village, and I think they were there for a little bit before the Olympics start. Well,
they're all synced up.
Not enough time to sync up, but maybe in the future they could get there a little earlier. Everybody sync up, get on the same cycle.
Make this fair.
Yeah, as you were talking too about pushing and if someone's thinking, oh, well, I have been hanging out at this, 26-pound kettlebell for a bit. I've definitely caught myself thinking like, oh, I should go up, but it'd be a big jump for me. So sometimes what pushing looks like for me is going slower on a descent, or like you were saying, adding more reps. So don't always think that it means going heavier, chasing PRs. Because I think that when we think of like mainstream weightlifting, powerlifting metrics, it's all about like adding more load, adding more to that squat, but better form, better control,
quicker.
Those are all great ways to measure too.
Yeah, and this is why we can't stress enough, like, reach out to us in the community. If you are like, I have a 12 kg kettlebell, here's how many presses I have, like, we will answer very specific questions in the queues for the club. If you can get on the live call, even better, we can watch you move and we can give you that very specific feedback. If you have access to us through form feedback in our highest tier, like, we love watching your lifts and helping you get better and helping you find the gaps. Like, that is what we do as coaches. And if you've been in the community and you've been too shy to reach out, or you felt like, I don't want to bring down the vibe with XYZ question, like Diane was saying, there's a very big difference between complaining and getting the support that you need. And so we cultivate a vibe in there because we want everyone to feel like, I am strong, I am powerful, I am capable of anything. But the reality is that pain comes up, pelvic floor symptoms come up, stress comes up, bad body image days comes up, and there's a way to seek the support of the incredible like-minded women in our community and our coaches without being a naggy Nancy, without, there's...
I understand feeling shy too, but I think something that I think you'd agree what our most successful clients do when they are feeling challenged, discouraged, is share that. And this is what I'm doing to try to solve, or they've tried to do their due diligence to maybe answer the question first, or, look at other posts to see if maybe it was answered before, if they're in a community setting. But, I'm dealing with this, or I'm feeling some type of way, discouraged about this pain. Here's what I'm trying to do. What other suggestions do you have for me? Because then it shows that you are growth oriented, that you are not just looking to outsource your progress to a coach or to a community or just to complain. You're, trying to share the reality of how you're feeling, which is totally valid, and seek support. Like, coaches, of course, want to celebrate you. I know in the community there are wins channels and there are wins threads, but the whole point of coaching is to help hold you to a higher level, to the goals that you've set for yourself, and to help you move through those obstacles, not for you to suffer in silence. I know it can take some getting comfortable if you're like new to a group, or maybe you've been somewhere where it was discouraged to ask for help in the way that you need, but hope that you at least are willing to be open to getting a little more comfortable asking for help.
Yeah, we are there, and we love, love, love supporting you. We love answering nitty gritty questions. Like, if you're like, this is the bell I have and this is how many reps I can do, and then XYZ starts to happen when I try to progress it, like, we will get in the weeds with you and help you figure out how can we make progress here without flaring. And obviously we are not physical therapists, and we will always refer you out if we think that it's something that you need some guidance alongside. I have, my friend Julia, who's an excellent strength focused pelvic PT. We have had so many women from the community do either in person if they're local to her in New York, New Jersey, or even virtual sessions with her. And
I have.
The amazing thing about that too is that she knows our programming so well. So, she's had so many clients from the community, and so she'll really be able to get in there with you, whether it's pain or pelvic floor issues, and help you navigate like how to approach the training block with that in mind. So that's always really useful and fun. And like I said, we're going to try to get some more workshops going with some trusted strength focused PTs to focus on some specific stuff that might be coming up. So that's awesome. Like we were saying, if you have been consistent with your training, if you are feeling good, you are gradually getting stronger, you are rested, you are hydrated, that might be a really great time to push yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit, especially if you have been showing up consistently throughout a training block and we're nearing the end of that training block and you want to try for a bell that might be a little bit scary for you. Sometimes that is a good idea. even if you have had a history of pain, and our bodies, like we said, they just hold that history. It's living in there, you know? And so
yeah, keeping that score and whatever.
yeah, really wish it wouldn't.
Can we just play for funsies?
The points don't matter. So if you want to test the edge, even if you know, like, oh, this has been questionable for me in the past, like we said with that dairy example, as long as you are pushing the edge with the mental preparation and the knowledge that this could potentially be a setback for me, like this might be a bit of a stretch, but it will help me find where that sweet spot is, and it sounds really fun and I kind of want to do it. Like, that could be okay as long as you are prepared for a potential setback, and as long as you are not stepping up to that lift with this whole story going in your head of like, 10 years ago I got hurt doing this, or, you know, like whatever starts to come up for you. If that is happening, I would encourage you to do the mindset work, get into some breath work, maybe some tapping, something that can help you to overcome some of the mindset drama that might be coming up with that. But again, even if all the perfect puzzle pieces aren't in place, but you feel like, I kind of want to push myself, it might be okay, as long as we can all agree that pain is not a scary thing, and getting stronger and pushing our capacity are important, but kind of finding what is that sweet spot. And also, I wouldn't, if you were testing one specific thing that you were trying to make some progress on, I wouldn't then also push 100 other things.
Yeah.
Like, we don't have to PR our squat and our press and our everything all at one time. Like, pick the thing that you're hoping to progress, and then keep everything else a constant. Yeah.
I mean, and it could be something like, okay, I was at the beginning of this training block, the Cossack squat, I was like, oh man, I have to get so deep. How am I going to get up off the floor? And how's this going to go as I get more pregnant? And I admittedly skipped it for a little bit. I also was doing the leastest for a bit, but got back to doing the full workout over the last couple of weeks. And 2 days ago, I was doing a day workout, and Cossack squat was in there. And I surprised myself. Like, even with this belly, I was like, ooh. And I had a good range of movement. And I feel like I kind of looked around like, oh, that feels stronger than like the first time, like going from one side back to center. I was like, oh, I don't know if we're going to be able to do that. Or I was clenching in places I shouldn't have been clenching.
Yep.
And it felt good. And that's where, like, I mean, it can be easy, especially when you're in the moment, you're sweaty, like feeling good, to then think, you know what? Maybe I am going to go do chin-ups. Maybe I'm going to do this. And like, slow down.
Let's take this win and let's keep everything else constant. Yeah. But so another thing I want to say about, and first of all, love that for you. And also, that lateral movement is just so juicy for the pelvis as pregnancy progresses. Like, if we can
open it up,
if we can keep you pain-free in lateral movement throughout your pregnancy, like, so good for you. But yeah, like, again, so much of pain is this mindset thing, and understanding that, like, a flare in pain is not the worst thing in the world, but we can't interpret this as that movement is bad. So like we were saying earlier with like I had this experience with deadlifts, or I had this experience with chin-ups, like, if we do decide to push ourselves and some pain does arise, trying to keep ourselves from connecting those dots and being like, I did something wrong. I just am a person who can never do X thing. Because again, that's that whole story we start telling ourselves. And it might be that everything is just fine, but it was just like a eensy bit too much. Or again, like an outside factor was contributing that extra stress load to the body. So don't be scared to push yourself. Don't be scared of pain, but let's do this within reason. And
not do a bunch of things, not pushing a bunch of things.
Yeah,
to
it's
find
like
the edge.
with supplements or skincare. Like, you would never try 12 things at one time, because then you would never know.
This has been coming up a lot.
A little too much.
This has been coming up a lot, and spoiler, it's a lot of like the fast metabolizers who are like, I'm all or nothing. Well, like, any reason why I can't start in on the phase 2 and phase 3 supplements? I'm like, Yeah, because even though you're excited, and I love that right now, we're going to add in a couple things at a time so you can make it a habit so that we ensure you're not having a Herxheimer like healing reaction to something and then not knowing who it was, or going from like a three-step skincare routine to a 12-step one and then wondering who broke you out or made you itchy. Like, one thing at a time. I know it can feel hard to come back to those basics as we've talked about in this episode, or do the accessory work so that you can get a crispy pull up or chin up, but they're outlined or programmed that way for a reason.
Yes. Oh, that's another thing that we didn't even write in the outline, but I'm so glad you mentioned it, is like read the program and read the notes. I know we mentioned this on our recent episode when we talked about pelvic floor stuff, but like when it's the first week of a training block or the first few weeks of a training block and we write do 3 chin-ups with a band that you could have done 8 with, or that you could have done 6 with. Don't just push yourself to the max and be like, I'm just gonna do this till the last rep is impossible for me because I'm great. And, you know, like the notes are all in there for a reason, because if you come out the gate with the lightest band you can possibly do and that last rep is impossible, you have nowhere to go throughout the training block. Like, you're stuck there, and then you're like, why can't I progress, and why does everything hurt? Like,
that's a hot tip.
It needs to feel easy the first week.
Yeah, and it very well could feel easy, and you might be feeling eager and excited because it's a new training block to move on. I'm so glad you brought that up. This also applies for like HTMA reviews. You get your full custom plan, and I add a lot of notes. Because I break down why I'm making a recommendation, the context clinically for somebody and their lab results, and so on. And sometimes people will send me their list of questions, and I'm like, that was in there. Yeah. Let's read the plan. And I know maybe you've had people reach out, but we have crossover with our lovely clients, our athletes, and some of them were like, oh, like I feel short on time going into the gym with my workouts and watching the videos. And something that's been helpful for me working with you for the last few years as one of your athletes is I like to, before I'm going into the gym, like early in the day, if it's a new-ish workout block, I like to watch the videos and look through the notes and maybe play a couple of them. Some things like, okay, deadlift, I know the form for that. But if there's like a new complex, I like to watch it and then just get kind of familiar before I go into the gym. And that way I feel like things flow faster. Yeah, and then the nice thing too about your programming is you're not like switching up exercises week to week. Like when you have an A day, B day, like you're going to be doing those on repeat for 12 weeks. So you will get familiar, but in the beginning, if you're feeling like that's lengthening your time in the gym, see where you can carve out, like, I don't know, during lunch or somewhere else, getting familiar with the notes.
Yes. Excellent advice.
Yeah,
and we do also account for that by lowering the volume those first couple of weeks. And so that can help too, like things just move a little quicker. And then by the time the volume has picked up, like you said, you've done that workout 8 times already. You know, it's just like, we know what
muscle memory.
Yeah. Okay, so when to push. So the last piece of this that I would say is just, if you have been stuck at a plateau for a really long time and you feel like not progressing that thing is costing you quality of life, that is where I would really investigate, have I been babying myself a little bit? And do I need to push out of my comfort zone? Like you said, even if it's just slowing down a rep or speeding up a rep or adding 1 extra rep, maybe it's not going up in a bell size, but it's like, if you have been training for a while and you're kind of babying yourself because you've dealt with some nagging pain or stressful season or whatever it is, but you can't walk up the flight of stairs you need to walk up every day, or you can't pick up your kid in the way that feels comfortable and strong. Like, if there is something in your quality of life that is being impacted by you not progressing in the gym, that is a place where I would look at and be like, this is a time when I need to push myself. I just need to figure out exactly what those increments are that are safe for me to progress without causing a major issue. And like we said earlier, also, like, yes, for some people, their training and improving the strength and coordination gets them to a place where they really don't deal with much pain anymore. But for some of us, it's like, my training and being consistent and gaining strength and coordination gets me to a place where I have all this function and I've gained a lot more capabilities, and my pain went from a 10 to a 5. And I'm still
that's progress.
in pain, but it's manageable. And I can now do all these things I couldn't do before. So like we said, we're all running different races here. Some of us are in the Olympics, just bleeding on the podium.
Free bleeding on the podium.
Bleeding on the podium.
Yeah. And for the person who sent this in, or if someone's really feeling discouraged or watching their goals and other people reach similar goals along the way, I'd invite you to try a practice of either writing down, making note, journaling, expressive writing if that's for you, or tapping on noticing those wins that might not look like the one that you've been going for in terms of like PR, progression, or whatever. But like Adina was saying, like, you know what, 2 months ago when I started this block, I was at a 10. Or for me, one that comes up that I was thinking of is I used to have this pattern of like of my shoulders raising and really tensing into my neck with a lot of my lifts. It was just a old pattern that I picked up in the way that I would carry my stress, and the frequency is a lot less. Now, I've definitely caught myself where I start beating myself up, especially in pregnancy. My capacity is lower and feeling frustrated with the pain that's come up for me. But then I reflected, I was like, you know what? There was a time where I used to have really bad, like without fail, after training, I would get a tension headache, or I would have hormonal headaches more often. And now they're so much less frequent, and that's still progress. That's still a win to take note of too.
Yeah, absolutely. On that note, I didn't think I was going to share this, but I'm going to share it. A little sneaky peeky for next training block inside of the club. We are doing another challenge because our athletes loved the last accountability challenge that we did. And this challenge is going to be the Celebrate the Shit Out of Yourself challenge. And so we're going to be largely focusing on everyone sharing a win every single week for the training block. And again,
Love it.
Wins will look very different, and we will be hyping each other up and celebrating the shit out of every single win, whether it's I went up in a crazy load increment in my kettlebell, or it's like my pain went from a 10 to a 9, you know?
Yeah. Well, I love that. And that's this week. I mean, this episode's airing when the new training block is dropping. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're not going to start at the very first week of the block because we want everyone to like get acclimated a little bit. But yeah, it's going to be very exciting, and we're very excited about it. Yes. So if you are looking for a group of women to celebrate the shit out of you, this is a really good time to join the club.
Yeah. Give support to get support. I love that. So what are some times that people might think what are some times that people actually need to chill? What are some signs?
Yes. So if you are feeling strong and you are feeling like your training has made you better at your life, you don't necessarily need to keep pushing yourself wildly out of your comfort zone. Like, we are not competing in powerlifting. We are just trying to live our lives, manage pain, feel strong, capable, and athletic. Like, if you are not hungry for that more, and you're like, you know what, this maintenance season's really working for me. Like, I'm not sleeping a lot. I've been dealing with some nagging up and down pain, and just kind of staying where I'm at, showing up for myself, working hard in my sessions, but not chasing, the next bell and quicker. And that might be a great season for you to just kind of hang out. And I had a few seasons like that this year, and I was totally okay with that. Like when rockets were falling on my home night after night, I was like,
not the time.
We are not PRing this block, and that is fine. We are still going to move our beautiful bodies and breathe and do our movement prep and keep ourselves uncreaky, but we don't always need to be chasing that more if we're feeling content and like our life is easier to live because of our training. That's kind of the really wonderful thing about the style of training that we do. It's not like I am unsuccessful if I don't go up a kettlebell size, which I hope that you all feel that way. I know it is fun to chase PRs, but we can still have a really wonderful quality of life in that maintenance mode.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then another piece of that, which we kind of talked about a little bit already, was just like getting really honest with yourself about your gaps. So figuring out if you might need to double down on some stuff those accessory things, those movement prep things that are going to help you to feel more stable in some of those main lifts, or not skipping the things that feel hard.
Like CC me, because I know there are things I skip where I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I want to figure that one out today.
Right. Yeah.
It's there for a reason.
The things you are skipping are likely the things that you need the very most. Yeah. It's me. It's me too. Like, I do it also, even though, you know, I am above that. I am not above it. I do it, and I will tell you a story from last night, actually. So it was my last B day of this training block, and I have an old shoulder neck injury from high school that really doesn't give me much issue, except for like early postpartum. I always have a moment early postpartum where, with each of my kids, where I'll like look over my shoulder funny and then be like, uh-oh, I can't look over my shoulder for 2 weeks. Yeah. So I have obviously gotten way better at navigating that throughout my 3 successive postpartum seasons. And I actually posted about it on Instagram for sure when this happened after Ori was born, and some things that you can try. But last night, it was my last B day of this current training block, which has our heavy double bell squats. And at the beginning of this block, I had said that I really wanted to squat my 224 kgs for reps at the end of this training block. And it just wasn't happening. I thought by the time we dropped down to 5 reps, I would get that. And the clean was just feeling so hard. And I was still dealing with some leaking with that lift with really heavy load. And I was like, it's not happening. And then I was feeling strong this week. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go for it. Like, it's fine. I'm going to go for it. I didn't get such great sleep. We had a rough one with the babies. But I was like, I want it. I'm doing it. And so I did it. And full disclosure, when we were doing the 3 reps of the cleans, I did leak on the 3rd one. And I was like, this is fine, because I know why this is happening. It's the end of a long day. I am tired. This probably isn't the best idea, but it's fine. I'm going for it. And then I knew that with the squats, I only had to do 1 clean. So I was fine with that. I knew the pressure management would be fine, and I would keep trying to get better each rep. I did the squats. They felt good. They felt hard. I was really proud of myself that I did them. And then this morning, I woke up and my neck and shoulder were kind of like, why you do that? Why did you do that yesterday?
We're fighting.
Yes. But I breathed. I did a little targeted prep that I knew would feel really good for me. And I am feeling completely fine now, which in the past could have been a completely different story. I could have been out for like 2 weeks with that. Mm-hmm. So that is just an example of when, like, was it the best idea to push that PR? A lot of signs are pointing to no, but
signs point to no.
It was something I really wanted for myself, and I was excited about it and not scared about it. And same thing when I woke up with that creaky neck and shoulder this morning, I wasn't scared. I wasn't like, oh no, this injury is back and I've done something terrible and squats are a problem for me and now I will always be in pain forever and I must go to a massage and a chiropractor and, you know, all the stories I could tell myself. I just calmed my body down with some breath work. I spent a lot of time in the sunshine. I did some targeted drills that I knew would make me feel less creaky, and I am feeling way better. And honestly, that story could be different too. Like, even if I had done all those things, I could still be feeling kind of creaky, and that would be fine too. You know, I hope that throughout this episode, we have communicated that, like, pain is not scary. There's so many other ways to make progress. And the most important thing is, as always, calming that body down and getting stronger in ways that are approachable for us and make our life more meaningful, more fun, give us more capabilities, allow us to do the things that we need to do in our day-to-day with ease. So, yeah.
Yes, completely. I love that you shared that. I mean, you are a coach who has been doing this for well over a decade now, and you know all the things, and you know that just because that you know those things doesn't mean that you are above injuring yourself or taking a step back when you need to. So yeah, I love that. I've encountered some of that, some things on my own of accepting different capacity and holding more stressors over the last year, last summer, it was grief of a couple of big losses in my life, and that changed my capacity in several ways with training. Now it is, a growing, changing belly that's growing a human. So I can't measure my progress in the same way. And I don't want to have those old stories of, okay, now my neck hurts, so I'm going to have to sit this out. Something that's been helpful for me is reconnecting to my why. It's something that we do at Root Cause Reset, something I invite my one-on-one clients to do, is connect to why we're doing this, why we have goals. So when I've felt tired or not good with training or a headache pops up, I think, all right, well, what can I do today in service of this goal of moving my body, of staying active through pregnancy? So for me, I'm like, all right, I'm going to still show up for the leastest track in STHH, or I'm going to start the prenatal track and I can always stop. That's something that I like to say to clients too, when they're talking about, oh, I was so tired, or I have a headache, or my cramps are bad. I'm like, you can always stop. And oftentimes you might find that you go through more of it. Also, on a funny note, I'll have to share this maybe to our feed. I saw a TikTok and it was like when you gentle parent yourself, and like someone, like they were having a bad day and they spilled milk and they're like, it's okay, we're all right. Like maybe we gentle parent ourselves a little bit. But yeah, for me, or for anyone who really likes journaling, trying to process some of the stress, tapping, love that one. And then reconnecting to why. So some tapping things that might be helpful is like, even though I have this pain, I accept myself, tapping on that one, choosing a couple spots, or, even though I'm not where I want to be yet, I'm healing every day. Those are some things we can try on, different things, but helps release some stress to raise your capacity for it.
Yeah. And love all of that. And also what we were saying earlier about reaching out and asking questions. Sometimes the stories that your body tells are really strong and hard to shirk,
Yeah.
Totally. And that's a wonderful place that we can also offer support, is if you've been trying to progress your squat and you have this old injury history there, and every time you try to push it, all this creaky stuff comes up and these nagging things come up and you're like, I just can't seem to do it. Sometimes it's mindset stuff, and sometimes it's well, let's swap it to a split squat for this training block. And you can still get really strong in those quads, but it's just going to be a little bit of a different delivery until you can feel safe enough to approach that thing. It doesn't always have to be as written, if written is what's bringing up those things for you.
Yeah, you give great modifications. And I think that's a great way to transition to closing out this episode, is how to get and give support. And I imagine a lot of people listening, and certainly whoever submitted that she's an athlete in STHH Club, but maybe people are listening who are not in STHH. They've been thinking about it. Maybe they're following different programming and see themselves in this episode a lot. It's so important to find support, a coach, a good program, if you are coming up against these challenges, plateauing your progress, pain. So we obviously are going to recommend working with a quality coach and great programming. But what are some other ways that people can ask for or even give support, in a community setting, and still hold on to that growth mindset through pain?
Yeah, like we said, it all comes down to how you phrase that question. Definitely ask it. Don't not ask it. Don't suffer in silence. If you are I'm going through the motions, but this thing keeps coming up, or I'm trying to do the thing, but I just am getting derailed because of XYZ. Hopefully listening to this episode gave you some of the support that you needed. But we always encourage you to ask your questions, to tell us what is going on for you, but consider how you are showing up to the group. And I know this can feel tricky. It is totally possible to tell us what is going on for you and to get the support that you need without complaining and taking down the vibe. We say it in the onboarding experience, but I know that was a long time ago for some of you who have been in the community for a while. But you can totally ask your questions. You can totally tell us what's going on for you in a way that, like Diane was saying, here is what I'm doing. Here is what I'm dealing with. Even if you're asking the other community members, is anyone else dealing with this? I know there are some women who show up to the community and say, here's what's been coming up for me. Has anyone else dealt with this? And there are so many wonderful, wonderful women in that group.
There
who
are.
Jump right into the comment section and be like, I am your best friend now, and here is what happened when this was coming up for me, you know?
Yeah, it's not just commiserating, like misery loves company, like not at all. You've cultivated such a great, supportive, growth forward vibe in there. So if you're not in STHH, get your booty in there.
Truly.
But yeah, I mean, coaching, it can feel like such a luxury, but it really is such a shortcut. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention also too, like you got to think about what you're doing outside of training. And if you're coming up against pain, really painful periods, hormonal stuff that's keeping you from even wanting to have even having the energy to show up for training at all. I mean, that's a big piece of it. I work with so many clients who are minerally depleted after pregnancy or for stress or for other reasons. So they go hand in hand. But of course, we're focusing on strength and getting out of pain this episode. Like, get yourself into a supportive community and actually good programming.
Yes.
I know
absolutely.
a gal.
We know a gal.
And then also, if you are dealing with pain that is not going away, PT is a wonderful idea. Reach out to us in the community and we will tell you all of our recommendations for strength-focused PT, pelvic floor or otherwise. And that can be such a wonderful accompaniment to the STHH programming. Again, especially if it's one of our trusted partners who knows our programming inside and out and can help you understand how to navigate it for your unique needs, because we do the best we can. But again, it is a group program. And sometimes that consult with a PT to look at the program with you and just help you figure out what are your gaps and how can we support you to be able to do this program really, really well with maybe just a few other tools in your toolbox can be incredibly, incredibly helpful. And then, like we said, with that upcoming challenge, it's going to be really helpful, but just celebrating yourself even when your training isn't growing exactly as you planned or you hoped. There's seasons to this. And it's so interesting now because like Diane and I are here and we're in such different seasons of this journey right now. Like she's approaching her first postpartum season. You know, it's gonna be here sooner than you think. And
I'll be third trimester in like soon.
It's crazy. And I'm finally like 2 years later at that point where I'm still not sleeping through the night, but I'm finally like, I can push it a little bit. I'm feeling, you know, like I've been showing up. I'm feeling strong. And so just remembering that there are so many seasons to this thing and we are here for the long haul. We are in this training game for life. And so we got to figure out how to show up through the ups and downs and support our bodies in various different ways so that we can continue to be strong and capable and athletic and independent and get the most out of life.
Yes. We love it. Love it.
Yeah.
Good chat.
Great chat. Thank you so much for submitting this question. And to all of you out there, we love you. Stay hydrated and unclench that V-hole.
Unclench it.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to the GYST podcast. As always, your ratings and reviews mean the world to us.
If you enjoyed this episode, take a second, take a little screenshot, throw it up on your Instagram story, and tag us so we can thank you properly for sharing this show with other women that it might help.
See you next week. We love you. Bye.